I came back to my lake house expecting peace. Instead, I found a stranger living on my yacht claiming it was hers. The gate was gone, my dock was covered in HOA flags, and when I called the cops, they said I was the trespasser. That night, I realized this wasn't some misunderstanding. It was theft fraud and the start of a war. It was late, close to 10, fog rolling off Lake Haywood like steam off a pot. I'd been gone 3 weeks. Just 3. I'd bought that place after selling my startup, a cedar cabin tucked into the woods, my version of quiet. But the second I saw that new iron gate with a digital keypad instead of the wooden one I built, something inside me went cold. My gate was handmade, rough rusted hinges and a padlock I'd installed myself. This one looked like it belonged to a country club. I killed the engine, stepped out and walked up the gravel boots crunching loud in the mist. The keypad blinked red. No logo, no entry. Someone had spent real money locking me out of my own property. So I took the back trail, the one I used for hauling gear. 15 minutes through the dark branches, slapping my jacket until I saw light through the trees, soft golden moving. Then I smelled it. Barbecue, ribs, and jazz music. I came out of the woods and froze. There was a tent pitched by my fire pit, laundry lines strung between my birch trees, a red SUV parked halfway through my flower bed, and at the dock, 2 HOA flags zip-tied to my posts, fluttering like some kind of claim of ownership. One was right next to my yacht, my SEOX 325. 32 feet of fiberglass and freedom, bought in cash the day I closed my acquisition deal. Treated her better than most people treat their spouses. Now she looked like a cheap Airbnb towels over the rails, plastic furniture, empty beer cans. Halfway down the dock I heard laughter, a splash, then a woman's voice, and there she was. Mid-40s, tan, bleach blonde hair, silk robe over a swimsuit, holding a wine glass like she owned the sunset. She saw me and snapped, "Who the hell are you?" For a second I thought she was kidding. Then she squared her shoulders and said, "This is a private HOA vessel. You're trespassing." I laughed short and sharp. "Lady, this is my boat." She tilted her chin. "No, it's not. It belongs to Lake Haven HOA. We're renting it this weekend. You're the one in trouble." You know that moment when you're too stunned to even be angry? That was me. Until I stepped on board, unlocked the Bluetooth lock myself, and opened the cabin. The smell hit first body spray tequila, something burnt. Clothes everywhere. A bra on my captain's chair. Pizza crusts on my navigation table. A kid, maybe 17, watching TikToks like he lived there. Another woman passed out snoring. I looked up at my hidden camera. Pulled the footage. 2.5 weeks of them living here, cooking, partying, showering like it was theirs. I walked back out, jaw tight. "You've got 30 minutes to get off my boat before I call the cops." She smiled, actually smiled, and said, "Already did. You're the trespasser." 20 minutes later, the sheriff pulled up. By then, she'd poured herself another drink. The kid was doing push-ups on my deck. The officer looked from me to her and said, "Ma'am says this is an HOA rental." I showed him everything. Deed, yacht registration slip, permit, camera footage. He looked convinced, but then Karen, her name was Karen, handed him a folder full of fake HOA documents with a fake company logo. Aqua Escape Vacations, LLC. She claimed they'd reclaimed my boat under community property rules. The cop sighed, said it looked like a civil matter. I couldn't remove them by force. So I watched her sip wine on my boat while I stood on my own dock powerless. I felt humiliated. Angry, sure, but deeper than that. Like I was being erased. She'd spun a lie so bold, the law didn't know how to handle it. I sat in my truck all night staring at the lights reflecting off the lake. For the first time in years, I asked myself if maybe I was the fool. Maybe I should just walk away, sell the place, let it go. But when I saw her the next morning, lounging in a robe, waving at me from my deck, that thought died fast. If the system wanted me to play their game fine, I'd play it harder. By sunrise, I'd called in help. Jesse Callahan, retired cop turned PI. He met me by my truck, took one look at the footage and said, "This lady's done this before." And she had. He found a trailboat sheds, even a cabin she'd reclaimed under fake HOA rules, renting them out through bogus shell companies like Aqua Escape Vacations. People too broke or scared to fight back. Next, I called my lawyer, Elise. Smart, relentless, allergic to HOA nonsense. By noon, she'd filed an emergency complaint, trespassing, fraud, defamation. By nightfall, we had a plan 3 fronts: civil court, zoning authority, and the public eye. That last part. That was my idea. 2 days later, Channel 7 News rolled up to my dock. I'd set up folding chairs in front of my yacht with a sign that read, "No, this isn't an Airbnb, it's a crime scene." Karen came storming out, sunglasses, robe, yelling, "You can't film me on private property." "Then get off it," I said. The reporter Diego handled her like a pro, asked if she had any comment about collecting rent on a stolen yacht. She barked something about legal process. He just smiled and said, "We'll include that." That night the story aired. HOA president accused of living rent-free on private yacht. Boom. Overnight, the neighborhood exploded. Emails, messages, angry board members realizing they'd been duped. Friday, Lake Haven. HOA held an emergency meeting. I showed up early, jeans and a t-shirt that said, "Not an HOA member." Karen sat at the head of the table pretending to be composed. Member after member stood up asking why the books didn't match, why a fake LLC was paying their bills. When it was my turn, I said, "I don't live in your HOA. Never have. But your president broke into my property, lived on my boat, and called the police on me. That's not community service, that's criminal trespass." The room erupted. They voted nearly unanimous. Karen was suspended pending a full audit. For a moment I thought it was over, but Karen wasn't done. Jesse dug deeper, found emails between Karen and the mayor, Mitchell Gillespie, her cousin. Turns out he'd been helping her forge jurisdiction maps and stall zoning complaints. A whole racket. Elise filed an ethics complaint with the state attorney general. The moment that hit the courthouse, things started cracking open. Then Jesse found the smoking gun, a forged letter signed by me giving HOA permission to take temporary custody of my yacht. Created 2 days before I even came home. The signature was lifted straight from an old marina permit. Elise brought in forensic experts. They traced it right back to a laptop in the HOA office. That was it. The sheriff called 2 days later. Karen was officially under criminal investigation, trespassing, forgery, wire fraud. The mayor tried to play dumb, said he barely knew her. Then a local reporter aired footage of him giving a toast at her niece's wedding. Public sympathy evaporated overnight. When the trial came, I sat in that courthouse, heart pounding but steady. Karen looked smaller than I remembered. Her fancy lawyers were gone. She had a public defender now. Elise started with the documents, the deed, the registration, the permits. Then the footage. Karen breaking my lock, dragging in suitcases, sunbathing with a margarita, renting my boat out to strangers. When her lawyer tried to object to the surveillance, the judge just said, "Overruled. It's his property." Then the letter. The expert testified it was premeditated forgery created before I even returned. Finally, Elise asked to enter the mayor's emails into evidence. The judge read them, frowned deep, and asked Miss Gillespie any comment. Karen stood, voice trembling. "I believe the vessel was abandoned. I acted in good faith." Elise didn't blink. "Was it also good faith when you collected $900 a week in rental payments into your personal account?" Silence. Then the judge's gavel. "Overruled. I was called to testify. I told them everything what I saw that night, how it felt when she called the cops on me, how it felt to be treated like a criminal in my own home." Elise asked, "What would have happened if you didn't have the footage, the papers, the means to fight back?" I looked at the jury. She would have gotten away with it. The verdict took less than 4 hours. Guilty. On all counts, trespassing, forgery, wire fraud, falsifying public documents. 6 years in prison, 2 mandatory. $332,000 in restitution to me and the other victims. She didn't cry, didn't even blink, just stared straight ahead as they cuffed her and let her out. When the door closed behind her, the room went still. Not cheering, just quiet. Like everyone finally exhaled after holding their breath for months. Outside reporters crowded the steps. I said nothing. Elise gave the legal summary. But Diego the reporter caught me by my truck and asked, "What now?" I looked at the lake behind him. The water was calm again. My dock was clear. My yacht sat gleaming under the sun, scrubbed clean, secured with new locks and 4 hidden cameras. "I rebuild," I said. Later that week I found the old wooden gate she'd replaced, cleaned it, painted it black, hung a new sign. "No HOA zone. We don't rent to thieves." A few days later, the new interim HOA president sent me a letter apologizing, inviting me to a community reconciliation event. I framed it and never replied. Sometimes justice doesn't look like victory. It just looks like getting your life back.